Well, we have Pastor Dave Stone with us today. Pastor Dave, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Hey, thanks, Jacob. It's great to be on with you. I appreciate what you all are doing.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this or not, but if you Google your name on Google, a thing pops up and it calls you a British science fiction writer, Dave Stone, and it has your picture, but these books that I saw are not your books. So I don't know. There's another guy out there named Dave Stone, and it says that you are a British science fiction writer with your picture
But it's
on
got
there.
my picture with it.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a new area for me to delve into, that's for certain. And I can promise you this, I would not sell very many books of those. I wouldn't know
But
the first thing to even write. So,
you would have
well,
to.
that's nice to know. I appreciate. I can't wait to get off of this broadcast and figure out what it says for you.
Yeah.
Who knows when I Google your name, what it's going to say.
Exactly. Yeah. No mug shots. Well, I just wanted to start off the interview and let you know the impact that you had on my wife and I. We come from, we met in church. We've been together. We've been married 20 years this year. And we served at a church in Kentucky for 10 years. And we left. There was a big thing that happened. And pastor fell into sin, and so we were children's pastors, and we really needed to take a break from ministry, and so we went to Southeast Christian, and we served there not served there. We went there and just hid for 9 months. I didn't want to do anything but just go and just heal, and those were one of the most refreshing 9 months ever. And you and Kyle preached some amazing sermons, and we heard grace for the first time at Southeast. And we came from a ministry that beat us up, and one strike you're out, and it was pretty bad, and walking on eggshells all the time around the leadership. And so to come to Southeast was such a like it just felt like so much weight came off of us, and God healed us during that time. And we got back into ministry because one service you were up there talking about ministering, and people are called to the ministry and things like that. And you said, in this auditorium, this morning, there's probably hundreds of preachers in here, and God is healing you. You've been, here, and you've been just hiding out or whatever. And you said, and God may be telling you it's time to go back. And I look at my wife, and she's like shaking her head, nope. And so I was like, man, and for like the past couple weeks before you preached on that, I was feeling like it's time to get back into ministry. And so
Really?
I just want to thank you for, you didn't know who we were, but just like listening to the voice of the Lord. And for those 9 months, you and Kyle really, really just helped us. And I just remember hearing messages you all would preach, and me and my wife would just be bawling at our seats. And I'm just like, man, we really, really need this right now. So just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, I was probably crying myself. I can cry when I talk about ministry, when I talk about family. Those things are so dear to me. And I jotted down what you said because I just think of so many people. There are big churches, there's small churches, there's medium-sized churches. There's advantages to every single different size. We used to say in the large church, the great thing is that you can hide and heal. The bad thing is that you can hide, and because there are some people that don't move on after 9 months, but instead they stay and they become complacent for years and years and years, and they don't serve and they don't get involved using their gifts. And so we used to say the great thing is you can come and be anonymous, but the bad thing is that you can remain anonymous if you want and come in late and leave early and never get involved in a small group, never get involved in a Bible study, never get involved in serving. And that's when people miss out on really what the true beauty of the body of Christ is. And that's through community and coming together and worshiping Christ through using our gifts.
Yeah. Yeah. we got involved a little bit. You all used to do a thing, I think in September. It was like a big thing outside. I don't even know what it was for, but you all had animals and all kinds of
Family
stuff. We would go to
Palooza.
those things, and there you go. That
Family
and
Palooza. We had it was a great outreach, and it was a gift.
yeah.
It was free. It was a gift to the community, and thanks for serving at that. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure this is a very long answer, but you can do a shorter version. But how did you get that call into ministry? How did that happen?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I started dabble in preaching my junior and senior year a little bit, and I got involved in a contest or a program in the state of Ohio, and so it kind of forced me to write a sermon. My dad had been a preacher; he'd been the dean of a graduate school, and a lot of different things. And my father was the same person at home as he was in the pulpit, and that's kind of what attracted myself to ministry, and my brother to preaching as well. And we just saw that genuine, real, consistent nature in my dad, and they were always encouraging us to use our gifts. And so, started kind of dabbling in preaching a little bit and trying it. And then I think it was really my sophomore year of college. I was doing an internship at a church in Lexington at Southland Christian. And that summer I was at a week of camp, and I preached at camp, and I wrote in my journal at about 1:00 in the morning that night. I think I can quote what I wrote, Jacob. I said, I preached tonight at campfire. I'd practiced all afternoon, but I'd ended up not using any of my notes. I held a flashlight to be able to see my Bible. There were 3 crosses in the background where I preached. I gave the invitation, and several people responded. And I know that I will preach the gospel till the day I die. And it was a profound moment for me. I was 19 years old and almost 20. And, I wrote that, 40 plus years ago. And yet I still feel the same way. I'll preach the gospel till the day I die. And, some people have a calling, a dramatic calling, something that happens. And for me, it was just with a lump in my throat on a smelly bunk bed in a room that was filled with high school kids that were asleep. It was just jotting that down in my journal and knowing that this is what God wants me to do. Just a few. Yeah, I started preaching there a couple of times a year before I retired. I put that in quotation marks. Retired from Southeast. I'd been in Southeast for 30 years. Kyle Eidelman was ready. I knew he was ready, and so I passed the baton to him, and took an interim ministry right after that, helping out a church that was in need of a pastor out of state. But then I started preaching more regularly at Christ Church of the Valley at CCV in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's a church very similar to Southeast. And so now I think I'm there 8 or 9 times, 8 or 9 weekends this year, and I love it because it's kind of like when I preach at Southeast. I don't need to be introduced. I don't, I can just jump right into my message. And there's a church in Southern California that I preach at 6 weekends a year as well. And I love just being able to dive right in. They know Dave's preaching today, or they might not know until they see me walk up, but I don't have to tell jokes for 3 or 4 minutes and try to win them over and earn the right to be heard in some unique way. Instead, I just dive into my sermon and, oh, Dave's up this week. And so my goal is to try to advance the mission of every church that I preach at. And it becomes a lot easier since I know Southeast so well. So when I'm back preaching at Southeast, that's easier to do. When I'm at CCV in Phoenix, I've been going there for 5 or 6 years. When I'm at One and All Church in San Dimas, California, I've been going there for over a year. So it makes it more like home. And all I'm trying to do is to advance the ball for the senior pastor there, the lead pastor, and help them accomplish what it is that they've set forth as a goal for the church.
Well, okay. So do you ever get, we talked to a pastor a few weeks ago, and he's pretty well known. And he said until this day, he still gets the butterflies before he walks up on the platform. Mm. Just the nervousness, and he knows the Holy Spirit's with him, but it's just still the butterfly, that you get. Is that something that you deal with or no?
Yeah, I still get it on Saturday night or whatever the first service is where I'm preaching. I still get the butterflies. If it's a sermon that I have reworked and maybe, it's 50% new and 50% old stuff, I don't get the butterflies as much, but I still get anxious and nervous and always will. To be honest with you, it's more that first time, because if I've done my preparation and if I've prayed and prepared, then the fear or the anxiety is probably a better word. The anxiety and the excitement is more for that first time. And then the second or third time, or however many times you're preaching at a place, then it becomes more of settling in because okay, this goes, that doesn't go.
Sure.
You've made this change. And then I think the key is being open to the Holy Spirit, because I preach from a manuscript, Jacob, but I still like to be open to whatever the Lord might lead me to in the middle of that. And I try to be obedient on those, and I try to make certain it's His direction and not my desire to throw that in. But there are other times when I can remember when Kyle and I, one time we were doing a big Easter service, and we were in the back and we both started to get dry mouth, and so I don't always get that, but there are situations and settings that are different or unique or perhaps larger or more tension packed.
Sure.
And you start to feel your mouth getting dry, just like, you did when you were in 7th grade in the talent show and you came out to say your 3 lines, So, but yeah, I hope I'll always have that anxiousness and those butterflies. I will this weekend. It just shows me that I've got to depend on the Lord.
Absolutely.
And that I got to work operate in the Spirit rather than working in the flesh.
Yeah. Well, you were involved with the movie Ordinary Angels with the Erwin brothers. How was that experience? I tell you, when we saw the movie, I was like, oh my gosh, Southeast. And I never knew that story. Like, that's really cool how, you guys played a big part in that story.
Yeah, Hollywood makes some little adjustments, but really in this particular case, they actually had to back some things down because the star of the movie, Hilary Swank, played Sharon Evans, and Sharon really did so many things that they couldn't even say them because it would not have sounded believable. She actually mortgaged her home, but they didn't put that in because it was to help out this family that needed this liver transplant, and she did all sorts of things like that. So in some ways, they had to dumb it down so that it would be more believable. In other ways, the helicopter rescue, the helicopter scene was really late afternoon in the daylight, but Hollywood's going to put that at night for the excitement and of the darkness. But yeah, they did a great job on that movie, and it was fun to get to work with that. And I also got to write 4 sermons, and so people have been able to use a sermon series that kind of dovetails with it, where they can show clips from the movie, and they can just go to Ordinary Angels. I'm trying to think under resources, and they can find those sermons. And it's a fun series that they could do that would tie in with it. And so many preachers are looking for something. It has a lot of felt needs in it. Talks a lot about depression, grief, overcoming some of those things, and also finding hope, and also finding forgiveness and second chances.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, when they had the news channel in there or whatever at the end, I was like, wait a minute, I don't know that news channel. That can't be a Louisville based news channel. I was like, well, maybe they couldn't do WHAS or whoever it was that was there, because I believe the news channel on that scene, I was like, I've never heard of that one.
Yeah. And that's why at the very end, I think the trailer of the whole thing showed clips from WHAS, and then they could put it up then. But you can't use another place's call letters or name without permission. And those permissions, I understand, get pretty pricey.
Wow.
So instead, they were able to pay for using it at the end and show the actual clip of, the live scene of what took place that day at the church parking lot. Yeah. So if you haven't seen that movie and you're listening to this, it's on demand, or it's on airplanes. It's you can see it about anywhere. But Ordinary Angels, it has a great spiritual message and should be encouraging to use your gifts for the Lord.
And then another movie I believe you were involved with, because you were sitting in a director's chair, was Unsung Hero with the Small Bones. Man, that was a powerful movie. And I think a lot of people were just blown away of the success it did. But I'm telling you, I was like, people want to see these kind of movies. People want to see faith-based movies. And I'm just glad that people are finally making good quality faith-based movies.
Yeah, Kingdom Story and Lionsgate combined on that one as well, like what they did on Ordinary Angels. And I've been friends with the Smallbone family for almost 11 or 12 years, maybe longer. And first met Rebecca St. James is how I got to know them and her father. And we all became friends and still stay in close touch with all of them. And then Joel and Luke. Beck said, would you take a chance, and the next time I come to Southeast, can I bring my brothers? My little brothers are starting a group. And then she said, they're really good. And I said, well, I'd love to meet them if we can help them out. And Joel and Luke kind of adopted Southeast as their home church for a number of years. And anytime we could help them, we tried to help them. And they have been incredibly good to our church. In fact, at my retirement, they came up and sang at my retirement, brought the full band, gracious guys. And I didn't have a ton to do with with that movie, but I was able to lean in on it in several different things. Was there for the filming of it here in Louisville, Kentucky is where it was filmed. And I got to read through the script, and hopefully I think Joel and some of the others would say that, I was an encouragement to them through the process, because movies are very grueling. And Josh Walsh did a great job with that movie. And I'll tell you, Joel is multi-talented. Mm-hmm. If you can sing and have the stage presence that he has, if you can write the way he writes, and then, on top of that, this was his second movie that he starred in. He is quite a talent. And Luke is as well. The whole family is multi-talented.
Luke's a dead ringer for Michael Sweet. I mean, that opening scene when he's dressed up, I'm like, yes.
Well, I give him a hard time because they had me in a scene, but it was, you have to look quick to see me, and I'm 6'4", so I was like a foot taller than everybody else beside me. And I'm surprised they kept me in even at all, but I think I'm in for 1 second, and that's about it. But Luke and Joel are as good as they come. And the whole family, the whole Smallbone family, they love the Lord. They're serving the Lord. And I love to see people who don't take themselves too seriously, and they don't read their own headlines. Yeah. And they really have done a great job of always making everything about others and not about them. So they're an easy group to get behind. And Rebecca is doing great. She's still singing. She has a podcast on Focus on the Family with parenting. And yeah, she's doing great too.
Maybe, Google said that you were a British science fiction writer. Maybe you can get some Aussie tips and do a Australian science fiction writer.
I'll tell you what, especially the audiobook would be well listened to. I'm always jealous of, there was a radio program, I was on every morning in Louisville for a while, and Alistair Begg was on right before me or right after me. And I could listen to that dude read a phone book.
Yeah.
Because when you have an accent like that, or when you're the small bones and you can just say anything, you never get yes or no questions. It's always compare and contrast.
Sure. Yeah. Well, with first time guests, we like to do a thing. The listeners really like this, and viewers. It's called favorite things. And so I'll just give you a word and you give me your favorite thing in that category. Sound good?
Well, I'm up for it. And this is with no prep, so you're putting me on the spot.
Let's hear it. No one ever tell us no, so there you go. What's your favorite food?
Oh, steak.
Steak. How do you like it cooked?
Medium.
Okay,
I can go medium. I can go medium rare, but medium is my go-to.
Medium. Okay. Do you have a favorite movie?
What about Bob?
I love that movie.
It's an old Bill Murray one. I don't know if people. I love it, man.
Well, I have two favorite scenes. I love the scene where he's eating corn on the cob, and he just gets aggravated. And then I love the scene where he's in the office for the first time with what's his name, Richard
Leo Marvin.
Yes, and he's like
Leo Marvin. Yeah,
he's like talking about having Tourette's, and then he starts going crazy. I'm like, that movie is like amazing.
Oh, it's so, and I think it's great for people in ministry because he shows up at the guy's vacation home in the summer. He's on his break, and he shows up at the counselor's house and says, "Is this a bad time?" And
yeah, I've heard
everyone in ministry has heard, "Is this a bad time?"
Yeah. Walk right before you walk up to preach. I need to talk to you real quick.
Yes. I'd like to confront you about something and tell you how you've let me down as a pastor. Is this a good time? Yes.
That's great. Is there a show that you enjoy to watch?
I like The Office.
Okay. Yeah. You're checking all the marks today.
I'm a big Office fan. Yeah.
Yeah. The reboot, I don't know about it. It kind of sounds something I probably won't be interested in.
No, I don't know about the reboot. So.
Yeah, it's the same director and stuff, but it's called The Paper instead of The Office, and then it's different characters. So I don't know.
Yeah, some of those things are tough to repeat, and the spinoffs never seem to be as good as the first version.
Yeah.
I think the writing of Seinfeld and the way that The Office chose to connect with people by looking at the camera and all of those things off to the side. Those are things that the character development of Seinfeld is just unbelievable to me. Most sitcoms back then used to do 2 storylines, and Seinfeld said, "We're going to try to weave 3 storylines in to every episode." And they said, "Well, it's never been done before." And they pretty well did it. So if you study Seinfeld, you'll see 3 storylines, 1 major one and 2 minor
22
ones.
minutes.
And everyone, yes, and they somehow get it in. Yeah, amazing.
Do you have a favorite musical artist of all time?
Oh, of all time? We've been talking about For King and Country. I love For King and Country. I love Mac Powell. Third Day. So if you start going through the different eras, yeah. And if you go back really a long ways, I'm really old. Whiteheart was a Christian rock band back in the 80s and early 90s, and I loved Whiteheart.
Yeah.
Wow. That's going back a long ways.
Back in the day, I liked David Meese. He had a really distinct voice as well.
How do you remember David Meese? Boy, that's amazing. Yeah, he was good too. Yeah, he was really good.
Do you have a favorite thing to do outside of ministry?
Yeah, I enjoy playing golf. I don't play as much as I'd like to for I play more out of town than I do in town.
Yeah.
But I love to play golf, and I love to go on walks or runs with my wife at the park.
Mm. Yeah. Do you have a favorite ice cream flavor?
Well, here's the sad thing. I became lactose intolerant about 10 years ago.
Mm.
I had ice cream, I think, every night of my life until I was around 30 years old. And then I kind of backed down a little bit. And mint chocolate chip has always been my favorite. And now I've had to find dairy-free ice
Sure.
creams. And good job on whoever started doing that a few years ago.
Yeah.
And my wife will taste any flavor I have. I think my favorite of that is salted caramel. It's salted caramel cookie dough, an
Okay.
unusual combination. But anytime she tries my non-dairy ice cream, she'll say, "Oh, that tastes like chalk. That tastes like paste." But if you've been relegated to a life of non-dairy, of being lactose free, it tastes as sweet as can be to
Sure.
us
And then
lactose.
when you taste the the dairy stuff, it's like, whoa, that is super sweet. Your taste buds just change.
Oh yeah, yeah, no question.
Do you have a favorite podcast?
No, it'd have to be Euros. I'd say
Sure.
Christian Music Guys would be at the top.
Yeah.
And then I like Eric Wood. He's got one called "What's Next."
Yeah.
And Eric played football for University of Louisville. Then he played for the Buffalo Bills, and he's got a good podcast. I like Al Mohler's podcast. Listen sometimes to John Deloney from the Dave Ramsey Group.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those are a few that I like.
Yeah. Well, what is next for you, and how can our viewers and listeners keep up with you?
Well, I'm continuing to preach in Phoenix area, in Southern California, in an area called San Dimas. I'm at Southeast several times each year. If we try to worship at Southeast, I try to say yes to 3 out of 5 weekends a year, and I plan about a year in advance. And then I try to worship at Southeast so that we can be there two out of 4, 2 out of 5. And we've tried to stick with that because I love Kyle Eidelman and I love what Southeast is doing, and it will always be home. There's no place like home. I haven't seen a church like it. And so I'll continue to preach. I mentor young pastors some. I've got a group that I'm staying with for a couple of years right now of guys who are lead pastors. And I'm working on some boards. I serve on some boards. I'm on Focus on the Families board. I'm on the Spire board. Spire is a Christian leadership network for Christian leaders. We have a big conference coming up in Arizona, October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And you can go to Spire Network and check that out. It's going to be an awesome conference out there. And I'm also on a board with some Christian camps all around the world. We have them in 11 different countries, and it's free for people in all these major cities. We bus them in, and they get to hear the gospel. They don't pay a penny, and we give them a 24 to a 36-hour experience. And it's reaching the most unchurched people, gangs, people that aren't believers, and it's having an incredible impact all around the world.
Wow. Well, to wrap up, I'd like to see if you'd be willing to share something that God's been doing in your life recently that would help build our viewers' faith up.
Yeah, wow. I'm glad you asked that because I went through a season of some depression back a couple years ago, and one of the things that I learned through that was that I couldn't get through that on my own. I needed community. I needed others to be there to help me. And depression is one of those things that if you're not careful, you will spiral downward and you will isolate yourself. I had a counselor say to me that, it will move you either toward addiction or isolation. And I started moving toward isolation. And so I learned the value of a men's group, being in a men's Bible study group that had a couple of guys who had been through that themselves. And so to have them praying for me and checking on me, and to have people that I could walk alongside and would walk alongside with me was a huge help. And the other thing was I just dug into the Psalms, and just getting to know David and his writings a little bit and where he was coming from, and realizing the fact that God was his refuge. God was his deliverer and rescuer. And so I know I'm talking to people who have been beaten down by the world, and whether they're in ministry, whether they are a Christian music fan, whatever the reason that they listen to this might be, I know that the world has a way of beating us down, and life just can be tough and hard in 2024. And so just knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that I kept finding the word, God is our refuge, God is our strength, God is our redeemer, God is our shield, all these things that God is, and knowing that he's still those things even when life is tough for us. And so if you're discouraged and going through a rough time, I just encourage you to hang in there. James talks about draw near to God and he will draw near to you. And I found that the more closely I drew to him, the more I was able to come out of that and realize that he's with me the whole time, even when life was difficult.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I will say again, work on your British accent and let's write some science fiction together.
Yes. This is going to be a new realm for me, a new area. And Jacob, I promise you this: if I write a science fiction book,